You ever look at those people who just dive headfirst into some massive, ridiculously complex project without even flinching? While, the rest of us are kind of stuck just spinning our wheels in analysis paralysis? Well, today, we're going to dig into some really fascinating data that points to one specific mindset that seems totally, completely immune to the overwhelm of a complex task. We've all been there. A huge project gets dropped on your plate, right? The to-do list has a million different moving parts, and all of a sudden, doing anything at all just feels impossible. Yeah, that's the paralysis of complexity. I mean, seriously, who can't relate to this? It's that feeling of being so swamped by the sheer scale of something that you just freeze. You start analyzing, you plan, you make spreadsheets, you strategize, but you never actually get started. Okay, but what if I told you that there is a way of thinking where that feeling of being overwhelmed just doesn't even compute? For this one particular mindset, a complicated task isn't a signal to hit the brakes, it's just noise, something to be bulldozed right through. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. This is coming from actual data. A recent poll of over 1,000 people, spread across 77 different countries, has found this really startling connection, or maybe I should say a lack of connection, between this one mindset and that feeling of being overwhelmed.
And here it is. This is the number at the heart of the whole thing, negative 0.0511. Now, what this number shows is the statistical link between having a red mindset and feeling overwhelmed. Since it's a negative number, it means the relationship is inverse. So to put it simply, the stronger someone's red mindset is, the less likely they are to feel paralyzed by a giant, complicated task.
So, what on earth is this red mindset? Well, it comes from a framework called spiral dynamics, which kind of maps out different stages of human development. And in that system, you can think of red as a mental operating system. It's all about impulse, about power, and about getting what you want right now. Deep analysis, long-term strategic planning, that stuff just isn't part of the core programming. Action is.
And this right here is its superpower. The red mindset doesn't get stuck in the mud because it doesn't really stop to think. For red, momentum is what creates clarity, way faster than sitting around deliberating ever could. It just moves first and figures out the rest as it goes. And you can see this action-first approach in some pretty famous business stories. I mean, think about Richard Branson. His flight gets canceled. Does he write a detailed business plan for a new airline? No. He just impulsively charters a plane, sells tickets to the other stranded passengers, and boom, Virgin Atlantic is born. Or what about Sarah Blakely? She just cuts the feet off her pantyhose and with only $5,000 in her pocket, launches Spanx. Then you've got Elon Musk buying Twitter, a huge, messy, complex system in a time frame that felt more like an impulse buy than a corporate acquisition. It's always action first, questions later. Now, to really appreciate just how unusual this red approach is, we have to see how it stacks up against other ways of thinking. Because for pretty much everyone else, complexity is a very real thing that you have to manage, not just ignore. And wow, this data just lays it out perfectly. So, like the impulsive red mindset, the more structured, rule-following blue mindset also shows a negative link with overwhelm. It just uses plans in order to beat it back. But then you look at the more reflective mindsets, the community-minded green and the big picture systems thinking yellow, they actually have a positive correlation. For them, their ability to see all the deep complexity and nuance makes them more likely to feel overwhelmed. Wild, right? So this immunity to overwhelm, it seems like an incredible advantage, doesn't it? I mean, the ability to just act when everyone else is frozen solid. But here's where we get to the critical twist in the story. Is it really a superpower? Or is it a massive, dangerous blind spot? This is really the heart of it. It's a duality. What looks like being decisive and fearless can, from another angle, just be reckless and totally blind to the consequences. That immunity to overwhelm, maybe it's not a superpower at all. Maybe it's just an inability to see the complexity in the first place. It can almost become a form of the Dunning-Kruger effect, being too ignorant of the real dangers to even know you should be scared. And the results of that kind of blind spot can be absolutely catastrophic. When you just charge ahead without understanding the terrain, you get failures you could have seen coming a mile away. You get burned bridges and damaged relationships, you get tons of wasted money and resources, and because the red mindset isn't really wired for self-reflection, it often can't learn from those mistakes, choosing instead to blame everyone and everything else.
This quote from the source material it really hits the nail on the head. What appears as not feeling overwhelmed may actually be incapable of perceiving complexity. So the reason red doesn't feel overwhelmed isn't because it's tougher, it's because it might be fundamentally blind to the very things that are overwhelming everyone else. And that feeling of overwhelm, turns out, it might actually be a vital signal telling you to slow down, to think, and to get your act together.
So, does this all mean we should just write this mindset off as being totally destructive? No, not at all. The key isn't to try and suppress it, but to actually understand it and to channel that incredible raw energy in a productive way.
A great way to think about this is using a pain versus gain model. For the red mindset, the absolute worst thing, its biggest pain, is being forced to sit still and analyze a project to death. It just starves that need for immediate action. So the gain then is to give it what it wants, but inside a structure. You channel that energy into things like rapid prototyping, into sprints where action creates instant feedback.
So, how do you actually do that? Well, first, give it a clear, simple target, a hill to take, not some complex 50-page plan. Second, you design short, rapid sprints. This creates a container where all that action actually produces useful data and clarifies the next move instead of just creating chaos. And finally, you have to reward the action itself. Create a system that values momentum and trying things out over having a perfect plan that never actually leaves the drawing board. And that brings us to the final big thought here. This whole deep dive isn't just about understanding some other mindset. It's really about holding a mirror up to ourselves. Because while the pure red mindset can obviously be reckless, its very existence forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. When does our own careful, thoughtful, deliberate planning stop being productive and just become a really sophisticated form of procrastination? Definitely something to think about.